Alright, so we chose to do our project on kleptomania.
Okay, so kleptomania is basically the reoccurring inability to resist urges to steal items that you generally don't need and that usually have little to no value. And so, some characteristics of kleptomania are that these kleptomaniacs really only steal because they can't help it. These episodes that they endure are spontaneous and they happen without planning, so it's just random. Kleptomaniacs usually steal from public places like a store, and the items that they steal have little to no value and they can usually afford them. These stolen items that they technically steal are usually stashed away, and the urge to steal comes and goes with greater or less intensity every time.
So what's the history of kleptomania? Well, in the beginning of the 19th century, a small group of burglars either impulsively or compulsively stole items that they didn't even need but were just easy to steal. In 1816, someone named Matthew used the term kleptomania to describe their behavior. Klepto means to steal, and mania means craze or stealing madness. This type of stealing is described as impulsive and illogical. The things that are stolen typically have three options. They're either hoarded, discarded, or given away. Kleptomania has been classified as one of the impulsive control disorders under a category that also includes gambling, trichotillomania, intermittent explosive disorder, and pyromania. These things all share the common feature of not being able to resist impulses felt by the body or brain to do a certain act.
Okay, so society's response to kleptomania is that while part of society sees kleptomaniacs as people with a mental disorder, others see them as plain-out stealers and robbers. Because of this, it might cause problems with the kleptomaniac's friends and family because they think they are stealing from them. Work-related problems because they might think that you are sabotaging them to fail in their task, and more. But majority of society doesn't care about kleptomaniacs or really act out about kleptomaniacs unless a kleptomaniac has done something to them. More times than not, the response isn't so positive.
Some symptoms of kleptomania include not being able to resist some strong feelings you have to take things that you don't actually need, feeling increased tension, anxiety, or arousal before you actually steal something. You could also feel pleasure, relief, or gratification while you're stealing something. And after you steal something, they could feel very bad guilt, remorse, self-hatred, shame, or even fear of being arrested. Kleptomania can differ from regular shoplifters because they don't do this for their own personal gain. They only do it because their body is sending uncontrollable signals to their brain to do it. These episodes of kleptomania don't occur every day. It's very random when it happens. They also don't get together with a group to collaborate and make a plan to steal things. It just happens individually. The majority of people with kleptomania don't usually steal from private places. It usually occurs in public places like a store or business. However, some kleptomaniacs also steal from friends and family members.
There is little to no information on what actually causes kleptomania, and so some researchers, however, are looking at possible connections between things in our brains, like impulse control disorders and neurotransmitters. Along with this, it has been noticed that the people who suffer from kleptomania also suffer from multiple other disorders like depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and more. With this in mind, it makes the idea come up if these types of disorders play a role in kleptomania.
There are quite a few statistics on kleptomania. Around 0.3 to 0.6% of the general population has it. It's estimated that roughly between 4 and 24% of shoplifters have kleptomania. Around 63% of people who report having this condition are female. Typically, someone who has this begins to show symptoms in the late teenage or early adult years, but the average age is 17 years old. Major depressive disorder is the most common mood disorder that coexists with kleptomania. About 35% of people with kleptomania also have major depressive disorder. Around 7% of patients with OCD also have kleptomania. Some studies have shown that up to 43% of people with kleptomania have a personality disorder as well. There's a huge relation between kleptomania and bulimia nervosa. up to 65% of people with kleptomania also have bulimia.
Laws of kleptomania. Defendants who raise kleptomania as a defense to theft charges struggle to show that their actions were uncontrollable. The Maine Supreme Judicial Court established a law that compulsion to commit a crime does not overlook the actual crime itself, and they still did the crime. The Maine legislature repealed the test for legal insanity in 1986, which left the defense to those who don't know what they did wrong. If a person can't control their craving to steal, they can't raise an insanity defense, but it can shorten sentence times.
There aren't many famous people that have kleptomania, but there are a few. For example, Lindsay Lohan, Britney Spears, Winona Ryder, and Jennifer Capriati have all been diagnosed with this mental health disorder.
So, the drugs that are used in kleptomania are naltrexone and serotonin reputable inhibitor, which is known as SSRI. And these two drugs are key in using drugs for a treatment for kleptomania. The use of naltrexone is helpful because it eases and reduces the urge of pleasure for stealing, which helps a lot. And the use of SSRI is helpful because it allows the neurotransmitter in the patient's brain to stop or reduce the urge to steal. With the help of these two drugs, kleptomaniacs have a way to stop their temptation to steal.
The main form of non-medical treatment for kleptomania is psychotherapy. This can include many things. Covert centralization is when you imagine yourself stealing items and then facing negative consequences, such as being put in jail or taken away from your family. Aversion therapy is a slightly painful technique where you practice doing something uncomfortable, such as holding your breath or pinching yourself whenever you feel the urge to steal. Systematic desensitization is the last one. This is when you practice relaxing and imagining yourself controlling all of your urges to steal.
Effectiveness of treatments. As with many other treatments to other disorders out there, a patient might have to try different types of treatment to find out what works best for them. Every patient is different from one another, so they might not have the same exact treatment plan. Alas, there can be relapses of kleptomania, but that happens with almost every other disorder out there, so it isn't bad or abnormal if a patient has one. If they do have one, however, they should try to reach out to a trusted medical professional.
The first thing you'll need to do to cope with kleptomania is to stick to the treatment plan you have so that your brain can get familiar with it. You'll also need to learn as much as you can about kleptomania. A key coping mechanism is actually identifying your triggers. That way you'll know what to try to avoid. You should find healthy outlets such as working out and meeting with friends. And lastly, keep your eyes on your goal. You'll see tremendous improvement even if it's not right away.
Next is our YouTube video that we found, and it's by this channel on YouTube called Meet My Story. And on this channel, it's like all about people who have went through issues through their life. And in this particular video, it's a person who has kleptomania, who was honest and who was kind, but they got in an accident and then they started stealing. So yeah, it's about this person who had kleptomania, and it's about their story.
Hello, my name's Patrick. I want to ask you not to blame me and not to make hasty conclusions about me. My story is about my urge to steal and what's behind it. I'm 16. You might think I'm a usual teenager with hormones who has entered the peak period of youth, but it only seems that way. Deep down in my gut, I have a personal drama. I've decided to share it with you. I come from a good family. I grew up smothered in love and care. My parents tried to give me all the best. They pampered me as much as they could. They taught me to love nature, people, and animals. I was also taught to be honest and decent and to help people if I could. I've always been a favorite of teachers and my parents' friends. Yeah, I was a role model with a frank and kind heart who shows dignity and nobility in any circumstance. My friends have always been exemplary guys too. Like me, they are fond of art and music. It all started almost 3 years ago. I was hit by a car when I crossed the road with the green light. I got a serious head injury. Fortunately, I survived. It took me about 6 months to recover. My parents were happy that I survived without any serious consequences to my health. though the doctors said it could have been much worse. Soon I got back to a normal life. Everyone was sure that the worst was over, but no. I remember very well the day I committed my first theft. It was a Wednesday. I was going to my music class when I decided to buy a bottle of water at the supermarket on the way. At the checkout, I saw a chocolate bar, and I very much wanted to steal it. To steal it, not to buy, though my pocket money would be enough for 100 bars like that. I was afraid, but excitement motivated me. So I pushed it into my jacket sleeve, paid for the water, and went to the class. By the way, I've always been indifferent to sweet things, so I couldn't explain my action rationally. Later, guilt started torturing me. Theft was against my moral principles. I didn't sleep at all that night. I thought that the shop's employees would have to pay for the bar I had stolen, and I felt very sorry for them. A few days later, I had dinner at a restaurant with my parents, and I had the urge to steal something again. That evening, I stole 2 forks. Of course, it was funny, strange, and stupid. I understand. But again, I couldn't control myself. After what I had done, I felt guilty again. I didn't understand what was happening to me, or why I did it. Forks? Really? I hoped it was the last time. I tried my best to convince myself it was. But it started to repeat. I stole things I didn't need at all. And sometimes I stole something ridiculous, like toilet paper, sugar, or yeast. Of course, my parents soon noticed what was happening. I started to bring all this rubbish into our house, and sometimes their belongings and money disappeared. For them it was a shock. But having studied my symptoms, they decided it was harmless teenage pranks that I would outgrow sooner or later. Once, when I was at the shopping center with my parents, I stole a packet of cookies. The security guards caught me. My parents didn't suspect a thing. They were just buying things. But then they saw the security guards and the police around me. Like me, they were terribly ashamed. We were ready to curl up and die. At the police station, we were fined. After talking with a specialist, we were advised to visit a psychotherapist. We did so the next day. The doctor immediately said that my case was most likely a clinical disorder. He prescribed a lot of tests and examinations for me. I was diagnosed with kleptomania. It turned out this mental disorder began after my head injury. That happens sometimes. But no one could have predicted the consequences of the accident would be something like that. It was important to me that my parents understood I wasn't a thief, and that I also suffered because of my actions. Luckily for me, they agreed that kleptomania is a disease, and I needed help. When my friends found out that I had started to steal, they began to avoid me. This happened after a visit to my friend Steve. We'd been friends since childhood, and he always knew I was a good guy. I don't know what made me steal that day. I stole a painting off the wall. I really regretted what had happened. I realized that soon everyone would find out about it. I felt ashamed and scared, but my friends meant a lot to me. So I asked my dad to talk to them and explain what kleptomania is. Dad returned the painting to Steve and talked to him and the other guys. After that, my friends started to support me and tried to control me in shops. They even stopped me from stealing a couple of times. I started working with a psychotherapist and taking antidepressants and tranquilizers. But unfortunately, sometimes I still steal things. If my parents notice the stolen things at home, they go to the shop and pay for them, or they give them back to their owners. I realize I will never become a cop, which is what I had wanted. After all, many jobs are closed to kleptomaniacs. I understand not everyone can be my friend or communicate with me, but I get it. They have the right to stay away from me. For the same reason, they have the right to despise me and avoid me. I hope that eventually I can completely overcome my disease and become a normal guy like I used to be. I hope I can go into shops without any desire to steal something. I hope my parents will soon stop being embarrassed by me. Thank you.
And here is all of the sources that we had and that we accessed, and that's basically it for this presentation. I hope you liked it. We worked hard on it, and yeah, have a good day.